The short run aggregate supply curve. Short run aggregate supply. While the long run is an anchor and stays in place around the full employment real GDP output level or the natural rate of unemployment level, the short run aggregate supply curve is an upward sloping curve like this. It depends on really one thing we're going to focus on: the expected price level. I'll explain that in a moment. The other pieces that it depends on that move this curve are really, if you think about it, the short run aggregate supply, overall supply of goods and services, obviously is determined by the long run aggregate supply. So the long run is dependent on land, labor, technology, and capital. Obviously, those things also matter for what you produce today, not just in the long run. So anything that moves the long run curve will also move the short run curve. And we'll also add to that the price of a key input. Now, most of the time, for my analysis, I ignore these two completely. This one I ignore because we don't usually move this curve, therefore it rarely changes, therefore it's not very important in the analysis. This one is really only there to help you explain a few key points in US history or world history. For example, the oil price shocks of the late 1970s. Oil, gasoline hits every industry, and therefore a change in that price would affect supply across the US. You could also have used that in the 2007-2008 financial crisis, where the price of financial assets went way up, and that hits everything. So the cost of all financing rose, and that could shift this curve to the left as well. But generally, if the price of a key input goes up, it has a negative effect on the short run aggregate supply. If the long run aggregate supply increases for some reason, it'll have a positive effect in the short run as well. And then we come to this. So most of the time, I write it like this. The short run aggregate supply depends on the expected price level, and it is a negative relationship. Let me explain why briefly. So, first of all, let's simplify this to focus on the one key input we really care about, and that is now, suppose the economy is in equilibrium here. This is the initial price level, this is the full employment output, and your initial starting point. Why would an expected price level change shift this curve? To start, imagine that all of the workers in the economy begin to expect higher price level in the future. Expect higher prices. All workers go to their companies and try to negotiate a higher salary for next year. So today, when I negotiate my salary with the university, I negotiate for next year's salary. Therefore, my negotiation today depends on my expectations of prices and costs in a year from now. Therefore, today's output depends on my expectations of tomorrow's price level. Indeed, if I start to raise the contract price I charge at the university, it'll have a negative effect on the university because it raises the input costs. So all inputs are like that in your economy. Every company, every worker, if they're watching the news and begin to expect future inflation, they begin to negotiate for higher salaries now or in their next round of negotiations. So as the economies and the agents in the economy expect higher prices, they expect it in the future, this curve will shift back to the left. Okay? Now, Likewise, should they expect a fall in prices or a lower price level in the future, they might be willing, and a company may push them to negotiate, probably not a cut in price, but probably a smaller raise next year. So after we end an inflationary period, my company may convince me that, hey, we're not going to give you as big a raise next year. And I'm okay with that, probably not happy, but I'm okay with that because I expect the price level to have fallen. So that can shift it this way. So I tend to do my analysis with the short run aggregate supply basically shifting around based on price expectations and the expected price level expectations. Again, it's not the current price level, it's the expectations about the future price level that moves the short run aggregate supply curve today.